for joining us. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Thank you all for being here. And, of course, the big debate last night where we saw Donald Trump, Kamala Harris go toe-to-toe. And we take a look at what happened. Obviously, we will take your thoughts. And just like everybody else, if you like Donald Trump, he won. If you didn't like Donald Trump, he lost. And, of course, we can talk about the fact-checking that didn't happen. 5 fact-checks of Donald Trump, President Trump, and none for Kamala Harris. Oh, Kevin, you better be careful. After last night, Kamala Harris is going to win. She's going to be your president. She's going to be your mama or your daddy. Want to make sure we're not offensive, but again, once again, Donald Trump makes television compelling, incredibly compelling. So we will talk about that. But today is a day we honor the fallen. Where were you 23 years ago today when the world ended? Where were you when the attacks on 9/11 occurred? Joining us now is our great friend, retired Command Sergeant Major Phil Hawkins, who joins us now. Phil, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Kevin. Glad to be here.
Phil, you said you wanted to share an experience that you had with Idaho this morning, so please share your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I think probably I want to make sure that people understand the importance of this day. I think what we need to make sure and do, setting politics aside for just a while to realize what we're all about, what this country stands for. When you go back to 9/11 and the tragic events that took place on that day, I personally have some input that probably is difficult for people to understand. But in the Pentagon, when the Pentagon got hit, prior to that, my brother-in-law, who was a colonel at the time, was stationed there. He had 10 people in his area, and he had a meeting up front, away from where the attack took place. When they finally were able to go in and pick up the bodies, he had lost 10 people in his team. I've always thought about how hard that must have been for him to have to deal with the fact that those were all civilian people that were doing procurement for the United States military to help us fight the things that were going on at the time. I think probably one of the things that was asked me to talk about a year later was, what can people do to never forget? And I say to them, be proud. Wear a flag pin. Pay particular attention to those people that are struggling. If you think about all that happened on 9/11 and those people that struggled, I have to tell you that I have to go back in time just a little bit. My last platoon in Vietnam was 1969, 1970. I was very proud, Kevin, at that time because I had a large platoon and I never lost a man. I'm not saying a lot of us didn't get wounded, but nothing serious that we lost their life or we lost their limb or something like that. Well, those guys all rotated back to the States, got great jobs, and was doing things to support this great nation of ours. And when 9/11 hit, my friend, my great squad leader that worked for me, was a firefighter at 9/11, and he was on ground zero for 27 days. He's the only man I ever lost in Vietnam. He died of cancer a year and a half later due to the exposure that he had at ground zero. I think probably about fast a lot because he was such a great guy, and he devoted so much to this nation. Not only did he fight for his country, but afterwards he became a first responder, and that's exactly what he was. He was a first responder. He was there, and he stayed there until they finally got relieved. What a great, wonderful man he was. And I talk about my brother-in-law, of what he had to suffer, to see, and go through. Now, for me, it was just kind of a tough little day. We were getting ready for the Veterans Olympics, and we had to canceled because Mountain Home was locked down, and so was Gowan Field. But we went ahead and did some things to make sure that the people knew that we were proud to still be able to put on this great event. So anyway, Kevin, I wanted to share that with you. I know you're busy, you got a lot of stuff going on, but just for about 5 minutes or less, let's forget about politics for just a bit and try to remember the tragic events that happened then and what happened with our country afterwards. I tell my kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids, they're never going to see peace in their life. We are past peacetime. What we are now is constantly going to have to do and keep our defense up just to be able to get through these things. Anyway, thank you, Kevin.
Well, Phil, before you go, as someone who has served their country and continues to serve, what would you say to people as we ask people, as you have, to think of their country first?
I think probably if you just take a look at the events themselves, even though 23 years is a long ways away, a long past, it's hard for people to even relate. And I think we have to continue to do things to remind them, hey, listen, we still got people. We got veterans that need help. We need housing issues. We got this. We got all kinds of stuff going on. And I say this, Kevin, I'm at the foothills right now, and I trek every day for my brothers and sisters who can't walk. I have 2 ankle replacements, and I'm still up there because I want to be there. I'm 80 years old, and I go there every day so that I can work and be there for my fellow veterans and those that need help. They can't walk. They can't do things, but I still can.
Phil Hawkins, thank you very much, and anytime, brother. Watch out for those coyotes and all the scary animals up there.
All right, Kevin, be safe. You're a great American, brother.
Thank you, as you are. Retired Command Sergeant Major Phil Hawkins joining us on KIDO Talk Radio live from the foothills. Speaking about September 11th, speaking about where we were. Obviously, we'll take your calls at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, but today is a day of remembrance. Bo, we're going to go to this live here. We will go to, on our run sheet on our September 11th run sheet, we will, get to that. But I'd like to get your thoughts. This is when you hear from Phil basically says, look, we all need to be together. We all need to come together. And then we have this one of a kind presidential debate last night. We'll get your thoughts, who won, who lost. A lot of people on Facebook sounding off as well. Thank you for doing that. But why don't we go to KM September 11th GB. And just so we don't forget, and one of the things that I understand is that we live in a world where nothing is guaranteed, and that was really reinforced on September 11th. You don't have to live in New York or Washington, D.C. or Pennsylvania to get it. But it was a world that our innocence was lost. And it's a time that I've always said that as the world continues to marginalize what happened to us 23 years ago, that we would never forget. And as long as we are together here, we will always share with you the sounds of what happened. So, Bo, if you want to play the clip here on KIDO Talk Radio.
Say again. Executive 956, did you understand that transmission?
Yeah, that transmission you said was unreasonable. It sounded like someone said they have a bomb on board.
Sir, did you hear the transmission where the airplane that said he had a bomb on board? Affirmative, he said there was a bomb on board. That's what we thought. We just, we didn't get it clear.
That aircraft you can't get a hold of, has he turned to the east now?
He's just turned to the east also.
Okay, 956, we had a visual on him, just stand by.
Do you have a visual on him now?
We did, but we lost him at the turn.
If you can make a turn back to a 220 heading, let me know if you can see him.
They were making a turn at 956.
Negative, we're 30 northwest.
We're looking now.
Okay, American 10-6 and Executive 956, we just lost the target on that aircraft.
Man, Z100, 852. Something weird is going on.
Yeah.
The World Trade Center is on fire.
Oh, my Seriously, goodness. The top of the building. We're trying to get information.
Top level of one of the...
News to unfold from New York City.
A plane crash. Just...
My sister's in that building.
Okay.
And I hope she's okay, and I got to run to New York. Oh, my God, it's complete pandemonium.
All right, first of all, calm down.
There's raining papers and ashes and...
105, 1025.
Second plane has now flown in.
Wait, explosion at the Pentagon?
A third location on alert and outside of Washington.
I don't have words to describe what I'm witnessing right now.
Effective immediately until further notice, flight operations in the national airspace system by United States civil aircraft and foreign civil and military aircraft are prohibited.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward. And freedom will be defended.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
On itself, and it is
just landed on Manhattan.
All right, so now we look back up to the TV. One of the World Trade Towers has collapsed and fallen.
I've never seen anything like this.
I've got 5 patients. They need to be... We got an ambulance full of cops and pedestrians. Building just collapsed. We don't have much more. Oh, God, another tower that just came down. All the cops away from the building. You got a female officer down. Female officer, where are you now, King? Where are you, King? Where are you?
We're not going to be stopped. We're not going to be deterred. We're not going to stay at home. We're not going to be frightened. We're going to live our lives as Americans.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
We're all brothers. We all got to stick together.
One nation, under God, indivisible.
Where are you, King?
My God, look at the skyline without the towers.
It is Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. This is Glenn Beck. Dateline, New York. In one of the most audacious attacks ever, terrorists hijacked 2 airliners, crashed them into the World Trade Center in a coordinated series of blows today that brought down the twin 110-story towers. Thousands may be dead. 58,000 people work at the World Trade Center.
Sean, it's me. I just wanted to let you know I love you, and I'm second I'm filming. I'm waiting at the building where Mom went off. We don't know, but there's lots of smoke, and we just wanted you to know that I love you always.
One plane, United Flight 93, crashed north of Somerset County Airport, a small airport 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. United said that flight, Boeing 757, left Newark at 8:01 and entered San Francisco at 38
Will prevail. We will not turn.
It is as old as the scriptures.
We will not falter.
And is as clear
And we will not fail.
as the American Constitution.
That is the news of this day. September 11th, 2001.
Is that United 93? that United 93 calling? United 93, United 903. United 93. Was that United 93? United 93.
I want to thank Glenn Beck for that audio reminder and a younger sounding Glenn Beck there. We'll take your thoughts on September 11th. Obviously, we will talk about the debate, and we want to say it's a challenging show today. No, challenging would be to be in the military. Challenging would be to be a military spouse. Challenging would be to be in New York, Pennsylvania, or Washington, D.C. We do want to thank Phil Hawkins for joining us live from the foothills. Our friend John Mounts will be joining us. John and I worked together 23 years ago when that happened. Why don't we do this? We'll hear from Glenn in Nampa. We'll take more of your calls about the debate and September 11th. Thank you for joining us. You are listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Joining us, let's go to Glenn in Nampa with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning, Kevin. I think for those of us that were alive and fairly grown up, because I don't think little children would necessarily remember the events of years ago today, I think it's something that we will never forget. It was like Pearl Harbor was for the people that lived through World War II. We had September 11th. We were in shock at everything that happened. It was just something that was, you couldn't believe it happened. It was just so unreal to see everything that happened, but it was real. And there was a documentary last year, and I wish I remembered the name of it, that went through all of 9/11 from a perspective of a group of firemen. And for those that weren't alive when 9/11 happened or don't remember it, I'll message you later through the AppYap Club the name of that documentary. But go and watch it so that you can understand where a lot of us older people are coming from. The sacrifices that were made by people that day on behalf of our country are something that we have to remember. You had the firemen that went into the burning buildings to try to help get people out. You had the people on Flight 93 that made the choice to try to stop another deadly attack from happening and gave their lives to do that. And it's something that I think changed me fundamentally, seeing those things happen. As you said, we woke up, we became aware. I guess we were sleeping before it, but we became aware of the fact that there are people out there that hate us as Americans, that want to destroy America. And there's a lot of things that changed after that. We ended up with the global war on terror. We ended up with the Patriot Act. You ended up with fundamental changes to how we fly, how we go through security. And as we sit back and look at this, I'm going to kind of tie this into the debate now, is did these policies make us safer? And did we learn from what happened to our country? You look at what Biden and Kamala have done with the border, and it's wide open. You look at what happened with September 11th. You had maybe, 20 terrorists and the damage that they did. And with the open borders, how many people that hate America have come here and could be putting together a plot to try to do something similar. The debate last night, Trump was brave to go in there. The debate was 3-on-1. It was definitely biased, and hopefully everyone saw the bias because it was Trump against Kamala and the moderators. And there were many things that Kamala said that should have been fact-checked and didn't get fact-checked. One of those things is when she talked about the Charlottesville riots that they had, and Trump's comments saying that they were very fine people on both sides. That has been debunked. It has been taken out of context. Even Snopes, who is far left, has debunked that and put the full quote. And yet here she comes out last night, trots this out, and the moderators do nothing. So the fix was in before he ever went in. And just like with Biden, the bar was set very low. And the fact that she didn't flub up very badly, everyone sees that as a win for her. And one other side note, there was a picture last night that someone had taken a screenshot of from the debate where they were comparing the earrings that Kamala was wearing to a form of like an earbud that's an earring. And some of the claim is that, are these the same earrings to where she could have been giving, someone in the background could have been giving her words to say in the debate. I think that's an interesting thing to think about. Anyways, I think I'm rambling on, but I just think that after 9/11, we came together as a country, and now we're divided. And unfortunately, unity is a hard thing, but also you have to stand for your principles. So there's just some things you can't allow to happen. But yet we need to try to come together. I don't know that I'm making sense.
You are, Glenn. Thank you very much for the call.
Thanks for the time, Kevin. God bless America.
God bless America. Let's go to Patriot Ray, who joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Patriot Ray.
Morning, my dear friend. I hope you're doing well.
And you
thinking back
as well.
I'm doing pretty good. My wife's struggling a little bit right now, but we're doing good. Thinking back on 9/11 and that morning when we saw the towers go down, our country became not divided but united in an effort to do the things that needed to be done. I mean, clean up the mess that happened from it all. Think about we had an enemy and we need to protect our country. All the things that were done with people. Color didn't seem to matter back then. It was a time to unite and gather our thoughts together and fight against an enemy. But yet today, we have kids that are adults now that knew nothing about that. And they aren't taught about the history. They're not taught about what took place. And we just get sound bites once in a while. But our country came together. Black, green, orange. It didn't matter your nationality. If you were an American, you wanted to do something to help protect America. Today, what are we doing? We're allowing people to come in that we have no idea what their plan is, why they're really here. You've got young men from China who come across the borders, young fighting-age men who don't have families with them. We know this for a fact. We've seen it. We go across. What is their plans? And why are we bringing in the very enemies of this country and not vetting them? Why are we allowing the open border? Kamala says she's going to close the border. They've had 3.5 years to continue building the wall, but walls are not good. But you better bet they have walls around or fences around their houses. And if their walls don't do anything, then take them away from the White House, take them away from Congress, get rid of all the dangerous things that walls put up. I am just so fed up with the thought process of people who are in Congress, who are in the White House presently, who say they're here to protect those young people and to protect this country, but they have done nothing to prove that that's what they want to do. Nothing at all. You have to go back 4 years, 5 years, and see what Trump did to build up this country. We were becoming independent energy-wise. We were becoming a country that was going to have great wealth again. And now what are we? We're turning into that third world nation that they keep talking about. And if we don't do something about it in this election, then I firmly believe that we're in deep doo-doo, my friend. We're going to have a big problem on our hands because these people that are hidden in the background are going to do things that make 911 look like a simple picnic. So she has supported people who are criminals. When cities were being burned down, they did nothing. They said these were peaceful situations. They're not. So God bless, my friends. Stay strong. Glenn, you did a great job. We just need to get the truth out there. We need to talk to our families. We need to talk to people who weren't there and have no idea what they're putting us into and what the dangers they're putting this country into. God bless, my friends. Stay strong. Faithful is good because our Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ are with us. So God bless. Have a great day.
God bless, Patriot Ray. Our prayers go out to your family and your wife especially. More of your thoughts, debate reaction, and remembering September 11th. Kevin Miller in the morning. Blessed to be with you. Don't forget our friends at Beacon Plumbing. They make this show possible along with our friends at Fox News. Let's get you to work safely and on time. 436-580-KIDO. Bo, let's go to September 11th clip, cut 1, please.
I think this is a time that we pray for the children who lost their mamas and daddies. We pray for the family members who lost loved ones. And what we must do is resume our normal lives as quickly as we can and to show whomever is responsible that we will not be frozen by their acts of terrorism. I hope that every mother and every daddy will take time tonight to be with their kids, to hold them and to love them and to let them know that they're loved.
Apparently there is a fire at the top of the World Trade Center. I repeat, a huge fire at the top of the World Trade Center. We have this now, yes? A plane crashed into the World Trade Center.
This just happened moments ago. A plane crash in the top of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan.
This is broadcasting at its best. It's what broadcasting does to serve the public best.
And that was the voice of a Kevin Miller 23 years ago covering those events as it happened. As many of you know or may not know, we were the first local show in America. We weren't in Idaho at the time. We were in Alabama to go to Ground Zero, where we helped coordinate relief efforts, where we profiled a young man by the name of Nino Van Dome, where we did what local radio does, which is a conduit. We'd love to get your reactions to last night's presidential debate, also remembering the fallen on this day in New York, in Washington, in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. 580-5436-580-KIDO, and I can remember those days as if it were yesterday. And we, again, the debate, the liberals are rejoicing, but as we've known with Donald Trump, nothing is over until he decides it's over. But again, for historians, for our own ethics and morality so that we can live with ourselves, we have to get your thoughts on this day. It breaks my heart that there are many media outlets that will move on, that have moved on, that don't understand this, and I get it. It's like a lot of us with Pearl Harbor, sadly. But going to Ground Zero 3 weeks after the attacks, flying into LaGuardia Airport, and the plane almost literally tipping over because everybody from the right side of the plane went to the left to see the smoldering embers. Where were you on September 11th? And, Pete Hegseth this morning on Fox and Friends saying, hey, man, today feels like September 10th, and I hope that he's wrong. Let's go to cut 2 to get you more of of what happened on that day 23 years ago.
A tremendous amount of smoke is billowing from the upper levels of that tower.
The wingtip tip had to be at least 150 to 200 feet wide. Oh, my God.
Oh.
The next building
There's another one.
Up. Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Another plane just flew in.
I feel the heat. The explosion is incredible. Oh, my God.
Another plane, as we were watching.
I don't believe this. The second tower has exploded from about the 20 stories below in a gargantuan explosion.
Firefighters, everyone yelling, run, run, people running down the street.
It just blew up. A big explosion. People started running. It was just chaos everywhere.
As soon as it got hit, I was thrown to a window. So I was very lucky to get out.
I was up in my office on the northwest corner of the 82nd floor. I heard a noise like a sonic boom almost, and then a blast. The building swayed.
I'm sitting down and I'm crying. I couldn't believe something like this would actually happen. And about 10 minutes later, then the whole building just started to collapse.
It was about 9:35, and I was looking out our 12th floor windows, and I watched this. It looked like a commuter plane, 2-engine, come down from the south, real low, proceed right on, and crashed right into the Pentagon.
The aircraft penetrated deep inside the Pentagon. It is organized in rings from the E-ring on the outside.
It's free college for illegals, feminine hygiene products in boys' bathrooms, gender-affirming care, but you don't need parental consent. Wouldn't call the National Guard during the rioting in the summer of 2020, but they did open the family home windows so they can smell burning rubber from the rioting. This is what we're up against. There's so much at stake.
The conservative underground meets later today on the Sean Hannity Show.
You know, when it comes to selecting and installing new window treatments, it may seem like there's nothing between, let's see, high-end designer and some random unqualified guy with a power drill. But guess what? There is a better way, and that's where Blinds.com comes in. Now, at Blinds.com, you're going to get the savings of a local handyman with the expertise of a professional interior designer without the risk or hassle or expense. From premium woven wood to motorized shades and more, you can get unlimited window treatments now installed for just one low cost. Now, you can't agree on a style with your partner? Well, just talk to a Blinds.com design expert for free. If you need help with measuring and installation, well, they'll help you with that also. And yes, you can get that in-person service and confidence from the comfort of your own home. Why? Because Blinds.com ships samples directly to you. They make it easy, fast, and free. And if you shop at Blinds.com right now, you get savings up to 40% off site-wide. That's up to 40% off site-wide for a limited time when you go to Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Thank you, Sean Hannity and Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Again, we'll have Mike Tracy joining us. We'll have a lot of other people joining us as we continue to break down last night's debate and remembering the fallen on September 11th. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Obviously, we will take your calls on this, and, you know, what can I really say, except it was just an incredible night last night. We apologize for, again, not having the debate watch party. I think it really would have gotten out of hand. It would have been crazy, but it was just something that was pretty wild, if indeed. By the way, to do our very, very, very low talented impersonation of Rush Limbaugh. Look, what do you think the libs are going to say? The libs are going to say it was horrible, it was this, it's the end of the world, Taylor Swift endorsing Kamala Harris, it's over for us. It's not over. But again, the liberals, heck, even when Joe Biden was stumbling and bumbling through, the libs weren't going to give Donald Trump his credit. So, I mean, do you imagine if they're going to do that now? Of course they're going to say that it's over and everything else. She didn't answer a question. Hey, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? No, she didn't answer a question.
Donald Trump got destroyed in this debate because he can't control his mind. And you don't want a president of the United States that is not in full control of his mind.
It was by far the best debate performance against Donald Trump ever by anyone, I think.
Including, quick parentheses,
it may very well be the best televised debate performance ever.
Yeah,
I cannot think of a better one.
I thought it was exceptional. I thought it's the best anyone's ever done against him. Both Republicans in Republican primaries and those big group brawls and one-on-one, even though I think both Biden and Hillary had acquitted themselves well against him.
Yes, it's the best ever. ABC fact-checked him 5 times. She didn't. She didn't answer the big question. Yeah, it was a setup. And yes, we had to bring in the race question. And I loved how Kamala, who backed Black Lives Matter, who bailed out all those folks in Minnesota during her failed, flawed presidential campaign, got a pass on that. Got a pass. David Moore, he doesn't care. He's just in the David Moore business. The other young lady, she has made comments against Donald Trump. But look, if it's one thing that we've learned from 2015, Donald Trump is bad, Donald Trump is this, let your heart not be troubled, to quote the great Sean Hannity. Nothing is over until we decide it is. And yeah, Donald Trump was angry. And my whole thing is that if Kamala won, why in the heck does she want another debate? Now we get ready, we roll to the VP debate. We'll see what happens there. I believe that's October 1st, hosted by CBS News. But, well, it's simply, if you want the world on fire, then you vote for her. And she baited him by talking down to him. And look, we're all about egos. Now, I was talking to a young lady that had a knee replacement the other day. She goes, Kevin Miller, to be in this business, the radio business, any business, you have to have an ego. And do you think anybody's talked to Donald Trump like that ever? Of course not. So she knew what she was doing. And Donald Trump being a man, not being a sissy, he lost it. How many of us wouldn't have lost it? Because common sense wise, when you have people contact your campaign and they go, oh, it's been debunked. Oh, really? Like Russian collusion diffusion was debunked? When you have people calling your campaign saying they're taking over Springfield, Ohio, and you're not doing anything about it, well, of course you're going to react emotionally. 580-5436-580-KIDO. I mean, and again, we have the article on our website. You can read what people said. We would rather hear from you because it is talk radio on your reaction to the debate. And of course, September 11th, we want to thank Phil Hawkins for joining us earlier this morning, sharing his thoughts about a family member that was in Washington, D.C. And as Phil said, and most of us do not understand this, that losing civilians, losing people that gave their lives. They went to work like it was an ordinary day. They were getting on a plane like it was an ordinary day. And it was over. Amazing.
Because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums.
Yeah, he spelled it out. This is not a test of this is not a test of Americans. This is a test of critical thinking. The critical thinking of the American public. Does it still exist?
Hello, President Trump. I'm just curious on how you're going to combat all the fake news and break through some of the noise to get the undecided voters to vote for you this November.
Well, by doing a show like this,
what are you going to do?
It's a great question, because you really do it by doing a show like this with Lawrence and the group. You have to get your word out, and you don't have a fair media. You have a very liberal, biased media. I have no idea why. I actually have no idea. Think of it. They don't want walls. They don't want borders. They don't want good economies. The things they want are destructive to our country. But I will tell you that it's very important, if you're doing what I'm doing, you have to do shows like this. That's another thing. Kamala doesn't do any shows. She doesn't do interviews. She doesn't talk to people. She doesn't do anything like that. And that's not fair to the public because they don't know what they're getting. But they saw last night what they had. They had a rigged show with somebody that maybe even had the answers. I mean, I'll be honest. I watched her talk. And I said, she seems awfully familiar with the questions, and you get pretty good at that stuff after a while. But when I saw how totally rigged that was, I take a look at it, and I watch, and I say, you have to get out there. And one of the things I did is I said, let's do this show at, what time is it, 6:30 in the morning. And it's an honor to do it. But you have to go out and you have to do the shows. You have to go out and do media.
Well, does she? Let's talk about it next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, is extinct. I would agree with that unknown gentleman who gave us that email. In addition to that, it's very frustrating. I would blame TikTok and all the videos. Video apparently has killed our minds. Kamala did have the questions, obviously. Wow. Well, she did seem very confident, and she did seem like the chickens were coming home to roost, and she knew all about that. I don't know if I'm going to go that far, mystery emailer. However, I will say this, that this doesn't change anything. There wasn't going to be a knockout. ABC News was not going to allow her to be exposed. The problem here is that we have to figure out where we go from here. We have to figure out what is next. And that's where you come in. And our political insider, Mike Tracy, we're just getting started. Thank you for joining us. Hey, folks, we're all in this together. Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning, Kevin. Good to talk to you this morning.
Well, it's always great to talk to you, Mike, as we always want to make sure that if people need help with politics or analysis or community issues like what's going on in CUNA, how can they get a hold of you?
They can reach me at 208-863-3940, and I'll be happy to help any way I can with anybody out there that is looking for PR or advertising help. So thanks for that, Kevin.
Well, we appreciate that. And again, your website, because you and I are all about the phone numbers, but I think a lot of people just remember the web, sir.
Sure. Mike at TracyConsult.com. Or just TracyConsult.com is really the easiest way to remember the website, TracyConsult.com.
Well, thank you for that, Mike. So where would you like to begin?
Well, one of the things I want to touch on first is the Save Our Ground concert benefit that's going to happen Saturday from 6 to midnight in CUNA. And, it's going to be a big concert. There's a lot of activities going on besides the concert. And if it's dealing with the solar panels that they're trying to, companies trying to get these solar panels in CUNA and Melba. And the farmers and ranchers out there are opposed to it because it's on private ground. So anyway, that benefit concert is going to be, again, on Saturday, this coming Saturday from 6 p.m. to midnight with all kinds of concert stuff and a lot of other activities going on.
Well, that is so important to support the community and making sure that the voices are heard locally. Mike, what were you doing 23 years ago today?
Well, on 9/11, 23 years ago, I was working for U.S. Senator Larry Craig, and I was at home working at my downstairs gym. I had an in-home gym at the time, and I was on my bicycle, my stationary bike, and I had the TV on. I didn't have the audio on, but I had the TV on, and all of a sudden I saw one of these planes crash into one of the towers. And I went, what's going on? And then so I turned on the TV and I realized what was going on. I got home or left home immediately. It got, cleaned up and into the office. And almost immediately I started connecting U.S. Senator Larry Craig with media outlets because he was in a undisclosed location, bunker, and the media outlets in Idaho and across the country wanted to know, because he was in leadership, they wanted to know if he was okay, what's going on. And for the first time in my life, I heard real fear in the voices of reporters that I talked to that day. And I remember really, it was just stunning in what happened. And so I was connecting him with those reporters, and it was a surreal day.
Mike, what was that? And you bring up a good point, and a lot of folks don't remember that if it hadn't been for those heroes on Flight 93, that the Rotunda was the other target. And you had the scene from Capitol Hill, you and I watching it on our television, but here you had if you don't feel secure in the rotunda, I don't know where you feel secure, but they evacuated and you had people streaming out of the White House, streaming out of the Senate, and wondering what shoe was going to drop next. How did Senator Craig react to that?
Well, he was very calm, so he felt like he was in a safe space, and he was just getting bits and pieces of what was going on too. So I was watching reporting on the event, and because he was in leadership, he had a chance to really sense what it was like being down in one of those bunkers on Capitol Hill. And as you might remember, Kevin, the Pentagon was also hit, and not just those two towers. So there were three other targets. There was the White House and Congress, and then the Pentagon. And so they had planned this out pretty well, and there were a lot of heroes that day, not just at the 9/11 site in New York, but also Pennsylvania and elsewhere. So it was a pretty surreal day because it's the first time we had seen anything like that on U.S. soil and since Pearl Harbor.
Our great friend Mike Tracy joining us here with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio, remembering September 11th, 23 years ago. What was the reaction like here?
Well, as I mentioned, reporters, I was connecting.
Not the report.
KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM and 580 AM.
Sean Hannity here. Catch me today at 1. Now back to my friend Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
And thank you for joining us. Back with our friend Mike Tracy. Mike, great to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. A little technical difficulties there.
Yep. Appreciate you letting us know about that.
No problem.
Yes. Let's go back to the debate. Your thoughts on the debate, sir. Hopefully, not only was I knocked off, but you were knocked off as well. So this doesn't bode well for today's show. So let's talk a little bit about, and as a lifelong radio guy, you understand where I'm going. So let's talk about the debate last night. Your thoughts?
My thoughts were, I thought Trump still edged her out, even though she interrupted him and baited him. At times he took the bait, but so did she. Overall, I could not believe how, and I'm not surprised that the ABC moderators sided with Kamala Harris nonstop. That just doesn't surprise me. And so it was really 3 against 1, even though there were no one else really in the room except the production staff. And I thought that was a very unfair overall takeaway that I had. But in addition to that, I thought Trump made a lot of good points about what was going on during his administration, what he plans to do in the future administration. And I've been a big Trump supporter since 2015, 16. And, even though it sounds like more of the same, I want more of the same out of Donald Trump because my pocketbook has been hit hard in the last 4 years, and I'm definitely not better off than I was 4 years ago. And I think most people feel that at the grocery store, at the gas station. And our friends that are out there that still haven't decided who to vote for just need to understand and realize that 4 more years of what we've had is just not going to do it. And Kamala Harris really didn't explain anything to me as a viewer, her positions, because she flip-flopped on positions. Trump's positions were rock solid. He hasn't changed. We already know how he's going to perform as president because he did it for 4 years. I want to go back to those 4 years, and I feel bad that we lost those, but we can get it back by getting him in office. So I think overall, I would lean toward him because it was a 3-1 pylon from the two ABC moderators, and then Kamala Harris just nonstop attacking him, and just really just spouting lies nonstop.
I was disappointed that no one followed up with the are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And you as a journalist, as an operative, I mean, ABC News continued to fact check Donald Trump. I was surprised they didn't ding him on when he talked about the former governor of West Virginia, which he meant Virginia. They didn't ding him on that one. But the idea that they just let her roll, and I don't know if anybody broke down the time, but I had it that they fact checked him 5 times, 0 for her. What type of advantage is that when you get a free run by the moderators in a debate? You've prepared the senator and others for big debates, Mike. You've debated yourself. When the referees are in the tank, how big of an advantage is that?
It's a huge advantage for the individual that they're supporting, and in this case, it was Kamala Harris. There is no safe way to get around that. You just have to interrupt the moderators the way Trump did and say, okay, here's what's really going on. And, he had to correct all 3 of them. And even though they were correcting him or trying to correct him, he wouldn't take it. And, he corrected them over and over again. And to me, that's exactly how you have to deal with it. Is okay. That's really not the case, and he cited situations that that he had actually worked on and improved during his presidency. So it is frustrating when the moderators are in the tank for your opponent, but it was to be expected, and I'm hopeful they do one more debate on Fox News. That would be, I think, Fox News would treat both candidates very fairly. And so far, ABC has given 93%, I think it is, great coverage for Kamala Harris and all negative coverage for Donald Trump. So it's pretty tough when your coverage is constantly negative and your opponent's is constantly positive.
Well, and then Donald Trump this morning on Fox and Friends on KIDO Talk Radio said that he's not down with Brett Baier or Martha McCallum. He wants Sean or Jesse Waters or Laura Ingraham to do it. Why do you think Harris wanted another debate? Do you believe that they are that confident that they showed America how great she is? I mean, Donald Trump was an angry man last night, but that doesn't mean he was wrong about the facts.
Well, exactly. And here's the thing, whether or not she wants Fox or not, I think, he should get to set the next location. Since he agreed to do the ABC one, it would be only right for them to do, to give him the same opportunity now, that he agreed to with Joe Biden, and now it's Kamala Harris. The individuals at Fox will definitely treat him in a more fair manner, and that's something he needs to have, and not have the moderators beating up on him.
Mike, where does the campaign go from here?
I think he just keeps doing what he's been doing, do his rallies, do press conferences when necessary. He does the gaggles or the breakaway quick interviews. I mean, he has been very open with the media and is willing to talk to the media nonstop, and if they want to hear it. And so that's the thing that, from my perspective, that I appreciate about him, is that he's willing to do so much. And I expect the next 55 days to be just nonstop traveling back and forth to the states along with J.D. Vance. And I think you're going to just see nonstop media hits and nonstop campaign hits all the way up till Election Day.
Mike Tracy joining us. Once again, Mike, if people want to get a hold of you, what can they do?
All they got to do is call me at 208-863-3940, and that's 208-863-3940. And I thank you for that, Kevin.
Well, before you go, one more time with this big event in CUNA, because we're all about local. So if people want to help this group that's fighting the solar farms, what can they do?
Well, they're going to have a big event Saturday night from 6 to noon in CUNA at the rodeo grounds, and it's going to be a great concert and a lot of events. The group is called Save Our Ground, but it's really made up of the farmers and ranchers in Ada and Canyon County. So they are, it's going to be a big event, and it's going to be helping, the funding from that will go to help the nonprofit, Save Our Ground, to fund the activities they have to deal with over the next year or so, however long this plays out.
Well, we appreciate you working with them. And I have to apologize. I was going to let you go for a minute, but Mike is someone who has covered the state of Idaho, who has helped the state serve the state. Your reaction to the Tamarack Resort evacuating and closing to these excessive wildfires, and is this the worst season that we've seen in the past 20 or 30 years when we're talking fires, sir?
Well, I saw some fires back in the 90s and 2000s that rivaled what's going on here. So I would have to say this might be close to the worst that I've seen, but it's not the worst that I've ever seen. I've seen a couple of fire seasons that are substantially worse than this. I can't remember the exact years, but if you talk to people who have been in firefighting for the last 30 years, they could probably cite the years exactly. And if you got one of the Forest Service guys on that's the spokesman and could talk about fires, you'd probably be able to find out a more exact
now, wait a minute. This is what I love about you. You're always a news director at heart. Because you're telling me who I should get on besides you.
Well, you know what, Kevin? It's just
and you're right. You're right.
It's just a suggestion. Thank you. I appreciate that. If you can get those guys on, let them explain it, because it's not that it would be a negative thing. It would just be, you could get some actual facts on what it's been like.
Yeah, well, thanks, Mike. Mike Tracy, your website one more time. We always appreciate you, brother.
Website is tracyconsult.com.
All right. Thank you, Mike. We'll catch you next week.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Our great friend, Mike Tracy. Really appreciate him. And I like that. Hey, Miller, why don't you go do some work and get the fire experts on? That is a story that broke last night. Tamarack Resort closing. And our thoughts and prayers go to all the people in the Donley area, the McCall area, New Meadows. Our friend Tea Party Bob was telling us that one of the consequences of these fires, these devastating fires, is that what we're seeing now is that the animals like the mountain lions and the bears and gosh knows what else, they're getting into the populated areas because the fires have driven them away. Remember, and you're much more of a man or a woman than I am, we live in a state where we got the wild creatures, even in the bumbling city of Boise, where we have, deer crossing the road all the time. Talk about what'll wake you up. And by the way, just a personal aside here, because and again, I'm not vilifying people that ride motorcycles or people that ride bicycles, especially in the middle of the night. But, and again, they always talk about going through a midlife crisis. And I go, I could be like those guys. I could get the leather jacket and, I could be like our friend Bruce and Shay and Don from the Boise Rescue Mission and I'd be a biker. Yeah. And then the realistic side of my brain, about 5% of it kicks in and I go, hey man, I'm worried about hitting a deer or a deer hitting me. So again, very dangerous right now. You don't need me to say this, but it's, life is difficult enough. Do we really want to make it any more difficult? By the way, again, more of your reaction to last night's debate. If you would like to read what Idahoans have said, you can go to our website, KIDOTalkRadio.com. I'll send an App Yap blast out on that coming up this week as well. Actually, I'll do that at probably about 8 or 9 o'clock this morning. And we'll get your thoughts on that. And as we said before, we always honor the fallen on this day 23 years ago. There are smoking good deals on new Mazdas this month at Team Mazda, where you can lease a new Mazda at crazy low payments. Here are two examples. Last week I talked about the Mazda CX-50, which is a midsize SUV. By the way, I was just hanging out with Aaron and Joel a couple days ago, and they are rolling, ready to help you. By the way, let's get back to the CX-50. It's perfect for anyone looking for an all-wheel drive vehicle for winter and off-road that's big enough for the entire family and gear. Right now, you can get a Mazda CX-50 at Team Mazda for only $253 a month. That's a $253 a month lease on the new Mazda CX-50. The Mazda CX-30 is slightly smaller than the 50, but it's one of the highest rated small SUVs on the market and super fun to drive. The payment at Team Mazda on a CX-30 is $202 a month. That's right. Tell them you heard Kevin Miller tell you can lease a brand new Mazda CX-30 for only $202 a month. Go see Aaron and Joel and test drive a Mazda this week. These guys know how to help you drive a new Mazda at the lowest possible payments. And look, like I said, I went there and spent about a couple hours with them talking football and watching the team work. Team Mazda in the pre-owned superstore on the Boulevard, or go online at teammazda.com. Please tell them Kevin Miller sent you. And why don't we do this? We will crank up the volume here. We apologize for the technical difficulties. That's on me, not Sweet William.
Repeated everything that Biden has said in the past.
What were your thoughts?
She made, Donald Trump made a strong closing statement by saying, why didn't they do all the things that she's proposing during the 3.5 years that they've been in office? And Biden did this entire moderate stance back in 2020, and she's trying to do it again in 2024, but she didn't talk about her policy changes between 2020 and 2024. Her whole centrist moderate stance is just a facade.
And there we had endless focus groups. That's where you come in. We would love to hear from you next. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Go out to our correspondent somewhere in America. His name is John Mounts, the most brilliant radio mind that I know of, and I know a lot of people in radio. We were blessed to work with John 23 years ago when the world changed so dramatically. September 11th, John and I were doing the show. And, of course, over the years, he's gotten older, I've gotten older, but our commitment to remembering those that have fallen is unwavered. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Well, it's a difficult day when we think of we've had the never-ending political war last night, and then, as you and I have discussed over the years, people seem to continue to marginalize September 11th.
It is a shame because on that day we were all one America, and at that time we were so unified and we all wanted to do the same thing, what was best for America, and it's changed so much since then.
It has, but let's take us back to that day, a day like this. You and I, of course, a much younger, slightly svelter Kevin Miller with a little bit more hair. You, no gray. A young man full of hope and promise. And 23 years later, here we are. What do you remember about that day? And, of course, as we, people may not know that we were one of the fallbacks for our company that we worked at the time because you never knew what was going to happen next.
That morning was, like they always say, it started like any other morning. And it was a Tuesday. And I remember the guest we had on at the time was a mass comm professor of mine at UAB. We're ironically talking about how media is shaped by the events of the world and how, we have to rise to the challenge to cover serious events. And in the middle of that, that's when the story broke. And it was, how like a lot of stories do, we didn't understand the gravity of the situation. We heard a fire at the top of one of the World Trade Center towers, and then we heard a small plane hit a building. And, we said, well, that's a tragedy that a plane would hit the building. And then we heard a helicopter. And it was a while until we heard it might have been a larger plane. And about that same moment was when we were all standing there, and we were standing. I wasn't sitting. I was standing there watching the TV. And the other plane almost seemingly out of nowhere. And I remember what ran through my mind I'll never forget, as I saw that plane banking, and I thought to myself, no wonder that last plane hit the building. Look how close they let them come. And before I could even finish the thought, I saw them turn and hit the building. They're not supposed to come. That was wrong. They were both wrong. And then I realized that wasn't an accident. That was done on purpose. And that's when I realized America was under attack. And from that moment on, everything changed.
Everything did change, and yet whether it was Boise, Idaho, or Birmingham, Alabama, people on the radio reacted. Radio was much more of a larger imprint on people's lives. What do you remember about our reaction? Of course, we went wall to wall with our friends Pat Smith and Paul Feinbaum, covering those things, taking calls, doing the national thing, making sure that we were on every radio station known to man in that region. But, when you're in the moment, sometimes you don't realize the gravity of it. Your thoughts on getting through that day? There were people that left work because they couldn't handle the stress.
I know, and other people that were called in, and some of them didn't come in. But yeah, we were very much in it, and it was almost like a nonstop rush of I don't know what you want to call it, because it continued on and on, and throughout the day, first this tower was hit, that tower was hit, the Pentagon was hit, then the tower, about 90 minutes later, towers started falling, and throughout the day, a lot of people forget, other buildings fell. The 7 World Trade Center fell later on. There kept being like story. Any one of these events would have been a huge national annual event, and we had like 20 of them happen in like a 7-hour period. And I remember as the day unfolded, we were like, what do we do? Because the tank was on empty. I was like, well, this is the beginning. This isn't the end. Even as the sun set, I was like, we got to go on. We got to do this tomorrow. We got to keep covering this, because this is going to be a story for weeks, months. I remember standing in your office, Kevin. It was after, because you were also you were the program director of the radio station. It was probably about noon at the time. And we were standing there kind of, I think we were on a national call, and they told us, they were talking about the national contest. They said, all right, guys, here's the thing. The national contest, this is the national contest. If this is that big of a story, everything else, nothing matters for the rest of the year. This is it. And we had to plan out what we were going to do, how we're going to serve the community, how we're going to serve our listeners. And we had to figure it out right then and there while still covering the event. Well,
and again, our friend John Mounts joining us, remembering September 11th, 9/11, 23 years ago. And, our whole point, of course, was to tell the story. And, I think, God brought you and I together in a very strange way, and a way that, as I've said before, when you work with someone like you, it ruins you for everybody else. But you were in your 20s, I was in my 30s, and for some, again, this wasn't me, it wasn't you, we decided to go. And here you have what do people in Alabama have in common with people in New York? Well, we're all Americans together. And the older I get, the more I'm amazed that we pulled that off. And we were the first local show in America to go there. We were the first ones to broadcast from that area. And then you had others go in, like Glenn Beck and Daryl Ancarlo and others. But to go in there and to hear the stories, as I've said, I couldn't have done that without you. Do you think when you go back to that as, someone in their mid-40s now, here you have you in your 20s, me in my 30s going, well, why can't we do this? Remember, everything was shut down. Security was immense. The towers were still burning when we got there.
Kevin, I was thinking about this. One of the things that changed since then is, I don't know, I wouldn't call it the wild, wild west, but I don't recall you asking permission to do what we did. I think you just did it. I think you had that in you, that you knew that's what needed to be done. And we decided, and really you decided, you told me what you decided. I said, okay, well, let's make it happen. You said, we're going. And you found a way there, because I'm sure plane tickets were hard. Because remember, they grounded all the airplanes. There was no flights taking off anywhere. And basically within, was it 1 week to the day, 2 weeks to the day? I can't remember that we went.
We went 3 weeks.
To New York. 3 weeks. Okay,
3 weeks.
I knew it was soon, but because it was hard, because it was still very hard to travel, and because all of the things that TSA does now, it was in reaction. A lot of it was in reaction to 9/11. They didn't have those procedures in place yet, so they didn't even know how to. They didn't have like they have the system down now. They didn't have it down then, so it was chaotic to travel back then. And I remember. I said, okay, if you're going to New York, you're going to have to have a way to get back. And we didn't have the technology then that we do now. We were fortunate that we went to our national news provider, and they were nice enough, basically because nobody else was trying to do what we were doing yet, to give us a studio we could work out of. But that studio was only good to do the live show. We needed to get audio during the day. So I remember I went this when Kmart was still in business. I went across the street to the Kmart that wasn't far from the radio station and purchased a 1995 handheld cassette recorder. I said, here, Gavin, here's this, and here's 4 cassettes, and here's a handful of batteries. Take this, get all the sound you can. And that was what you did when you weren't on the air doing the 4-hour show. It was a 4-hour show, wasn't it? 5 to 9, I think.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought. Yeah, when you weren't doing the 4-hour show, you were on the streets and you were talking to basically everybody who would talk to you: taxi cab drivers, policemen, firemen. When they weren't doing, and most of them, of course, were very busy doing what they have to do because they have a job to do. But when they had a little bit of downtime, they would a lot of them would talk to you, and you talked to so many people. Nino and his mom, the people who are feeding the workers, the relief workers at Ground Zero, all of these people, and bringing their story back. And you would catch that on a cassette. You'd come into the radio station super early in the morning, earlier than early because, the show already started at 5 a.m. So you were coming in at 3 a.m., something like that, and you would feed back to me the cassette audio. Because, again, there was no such thing as attaching an MP3. I was working with my morning team here in Birmingham today, and I was handing them audio, and they said, why are all these WAV files? I said, because MP3s didn't exist in 2001. To think about what we didn't have back then. So there was no putting an attachment really on. We were just slightly better than dial-up then. So you had to feed back to me over the ISDN the cassette recordings of all these people. I had to cut them up so that we could play them on the show to bring everyone the stories that they hadn't heard yet, because nobody had been out there asking people, what did you see? Officer Sean, all these policemen that had a story to tell, and each one of them could have written a book about what they saw, 3 weeks earlier.
Our friend John Mounts joining us, remembering 9/11 23 years ago today, and the beauty of radio. And again, you and I will fall on our swords with this beloved format. But we go there, we meet Nino Van Dome. Eventually he's featured on Good Morning America, where he's an immigrant from Italy with his mother, beautiful Josephine, 80-some years old, which doesn't seem that old anymore. And they're feeding the workers at Ground Zero, and they take me in. They don't let the media in except me. And here I am, this goof. And we play the audio, and we keep in touch with them. And then you have this faith-based church group. I know I'm being redundant. A church group obviously is faith-based, that takes their kids up there, like 10, 20 kids, 30 kids, that went and volunteered based on that one broadcast.
And that was incredible, the things. And I think this is what people forget about our medium, radio, is that, okay, television has pictures and stuff, but I feel like we have that emotional one-on-one connection, the connection that I think is lost sometimes through Twitter and through social media and through all this other stuff. We have that tug at the heartstrings, real connection. We're talking one-on-one with you right now as you're sitting in your car in Boise, Idaho. You're listening to what we're saying to you like we're sitting right there, and that's how it was on 9/11. We're telling people like we're sitting there with you right there, telling you what's happening now, what's happening next, and what you can do to help. And that, I think, is something that only talk radio can do.
Oh, I would agree with you on that. The magic of the spoken word format. Any final thought that you'd like to share with us today?
I go back to where I started, which is on that day, we were all Americans. And I remember going home to a little apartment I lived in, and there was a lot of people who probably I had nothing in common with. They had American flags hanging off. That day had American flags hanging off their porch, and we were all united. And sadly, we're not anymore. And I wish it wouldn't take a tragedy to get us back to that.
Our old friend John Mounts joining us, and we're still here. You're still there. And again, I want to thank you for all the years of you toiling in the background. You have made so many people in this business much more famous than they deserve, including me. But we go back to just two guys and all those people that we lost today. So thank you very much, John.
You're welcome, Kevin. Thank you for your service.
And yours. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. People on the phone, let's get to them. Let's go to Pro-Life on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pro. Sorry to keep you waiting so long. My bad. My apologies.
Well, I guess maybe that's the way you have to do it. But anyway, I watched the television presentation, and the thing that's the sickest about it is the ABC, NBC, CBS, all of those commentators before and after the debate, they just are so prejudiced against Trump and for Kamala Harris. And if somebody tuning in that didn't know anything about any of this, they would think, wow, I've got to trust these people on the television commentators because they must know something. Well, they're just lying, and it's a terrible situation. And it just brings me back to the thought that if people don't have faith in God and faith in an eternal perfect justice, in other words, you're going to get punished for lying and misrepresenting and just being a general crook, because you will be in the next world. But people don't have faith in God anymore and faith in eternal justice. So we've just been brought to this terrible situation where we're just full of lies, and our media is just terrible lying. And so anyway, that's all I've got to say about the debate. And then I just want to say one thing about 9/11. In Towers 1, 2, and Building 7, they found thermite explosive and other explosives, but mostly thermite explosives. Those buildings were brought down by explosives. Of course, the planes hit them, but Building 7 had no damage from the Twin Towers. It just collapsed on itself. It was a controlled demolition, and nobody's been able to explain that. So 9/11 was, I believe, an inside job. It's pretty obvious. And, you're not supposed to say that because then you'll be a nut. Well, I'm a nut, and I know the truth about that. So anyway, that's all I got to say, Kevin. God bless you, and we need to all repent and get real honest and truthful.
God bless you, Pro-Life, and we're going to agree to disagree on that. Let's go to Dustin Ferdinand, who joins us now. Dustin, thank you for joining us. Apologize for not getting to you. I didn't see the calls. Good morning.
Morning. How are you today? First of all,
great. What can we do for you?
First of all, I got to say, never forget. Remember what today is. Following back on Mike Tracy's community benefit concert for our solar cause. So just letting you guys know that it's September 14th, 6 p.m. to midnight. I know, notice Mike, said till noon, but it's actually in the evening. Basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to stop corporate America in our backyard. We're fighting Bill Gates and Shell Oil, who's trying to put 2,400 acres of solar in the center of our Cuna and Melba communities. Just definitely want to say, everybody's invited. It's going to be great, family fun. We're featuring 2 local bands, Day Wage and Problematic.
I think more people are worried about the solar farms than the bands, but why is this issue so important to you?
Because, well, first of all, losing farm ground is a nationwide problem. And the chunk that they're trying to put this on in Ada County is actually the last largest chunk of farm ground in Ada County. Not to mention the health concerns for the neighbors and the community around this thing.
Well, Dustin, why don't you send me an email? Maybe we can get you on for a longer segment if you don't mind.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, just send me an email. Thank you, Dustin. Appreciate it. And again, we always serve the local community. This is a big issue in Ada County, Canyon County, the erosion of farmland. Let's go to Concerned in Emmett. Concerned, I apologize for not getting to you on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. Well, you did get to me, so I'm patient. I just wanted to say, like on the debate last night, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. I wish Trump's team would have challenged her on the screen, and Trump would have said, I have, had 2 debates with you. You pick the place. You pick the rules. You have done this, twice now, or the Democrats have done this twice now. And I would say I challenge you to have a debate on a newscast of my choice, and let Trump control that once, and just ask that and put the pressure on her. Say, look, I've done this twice for you. Now I challenge you to have a debate with me with my choice of moderators, and I think that would have been a good time to put her on the spot. But yeah, and then 9/11, it's just incredible to remember everything that happened there. I just, people tend to forget pretty quick, and it's something we cannot forget what happened. And and the question will be asked, where was God when this happened? And once again, this nation needs to turn back to God, because it's that's the only thing that's really going to heal this. It ain't Trump. It ain't anything. God's the one that's going to heal this country, because that's what we stood for, and that's what we need to go back to. But that's it. Kevin, God bless your show, and keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Concern. Appreciate you. Wanted to clear the lines there at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Another day in Idaho. Obviously, where were you 23 years ago when the world changed? And, we think back to that. Has America really gotten safer? And does America really believe, when we're looking at these politicians, quite frankly, who is going to keep us safe? Is it going to be the current vice president? Is it going to be the former president? And once again, thanks to Sweet William Productions, we go back to a big question that was asked of Harris when she was running for the presidency in 2019.
Weapons. That's right. President Obama, after Sandy Hook, more than 23 executive actions, and yet here we all are today. In recent days, former Vice President Biden has said about executive orders, some really talented people are seeking the nomination. They said, I'm going to issue an executive order. Biden saying there's no constitutional authority to issue that executive order when they say I'm going to eliminate assault weapons, saying you can't do it by executive order any more than Trump can do things when he says he can do it by executive order. Does the Vice President have a point there?
Some things you can. Many things you can't.
Let's let the senator answer.
Well, I would just say, hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, let's say yes, we can.
Let's be constitutional. We got a constitution.
And yes, we can, because I'll tell you something. The way that I think about this.
By the way, you're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. She's going back to her vow that she will issue an executive order banning assault weapons in America. Now remember, the Biden-Harris crew, they've issued executive orders that have been shot down by the United States Supreme Court. Harris, for having the wind in her bath, for having more money than you know what to do with, it's still tied, because thankfully most of the people in this country are not dummies. But she will take the guns.
I've seen more autopsy photographs than I care to tell you. I have attended more police officer funerals than I care to tell you. I have hugged more mothers of homicide victims than I care to tell you. And the idea that we would wait for this Congress, which has just done nothing, to act is just, it is overlooking the fact that every day in America, our babies are going to school to have drills, elementary, middle, and high school students. where they are learning about how they have to hide in a closet or crouch in a corner if there is a mass shooter roaming the hallways of their school. I was talking about this at one of my town halls, and this child, it was 8 years old probably, came up to me. It was like it was a secret between the two of us, and he tugged on my jacket and he said, I had to have one of those drills.
And there we have it. So this was, 5 years ago? This is what America's going to vote for. And look, you have to believe. When it was 2016, we all thought that Donald Trump was done. We all thought that Donald Trump was over. I don't believe that it's over. By the way, people that are studying politics, if people still do that in college, this one, the Trump-Harris debates, should be studied year after year.
We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas.
Right. Joe Biden hates her. Of course, there was no follow-up there from ABC. There was no follow-up at all. But how did America react? How did America react? Let's take a listen.
Look, I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. If she could run over a child live on TV, I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. I'm never going to vote for Trump.
That's gnarly.
But the fact is, even though I think she'll make a good president, she's not a good candidate. If you remember from when she ran before, she tends to get real irritated with stuff she doesn't like. She's not real fast on her feet. Maybe she's better now, but live events, things like that, I don't know, man. I don't think she's going to do so well in the debate.
Okay, that was the pre-debate, but here you have it. She can run over a child on live TV, and I'm still going to vote for her. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We'd love to hear your reaction next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
KIDO.
Just heard Buck talk about Sean Hannity, 1 to 4, and of course, Lars Larson. We're going to tell the truth. And then we'll have the replay of Glenn Beck tonight at 7. The truth lives here with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go to Keith in Nampa on September 11th. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, Kevin. Good show as always. Yeah, I'm from New York. I have a cousin who can no longer fight fires because of 9/11, all the junk that he breathed in. But, obviously planes hit the buildings, but there's you can hear the audio of the police comms when they're saying, hey, they're taking the building for Building 7. There was molten steel on the bottom. So we know AV fuel can't burn to the temperature that makes steel molten. So to say it's strictly what the government says, what was the two things we got out of it? The Patriot Act and the Real ID Act, which federalized all the state DMV databases, and we had to get these new IDs. And then the Patriot Act, which goes into areas that had nothing to do with what happened with the terrorists. And then let's not forget, you pretty much have to get a body cavity search to get on a plane. Let's also remember that Bush brought in the former head of the German Stasi to help set up Department of Homeland Security, who headed it, and then where did Chertoff go to work? The company who sold the machines that everybody goes through to get scanned at the airports. So, yeah, it's terrible. A lot of people died, but there is more to it than just what they put out, and it's up to people to do the research. It's out there. There's testimony for firemen, other people as well, that you cannot dispute. And the Pentagon, that's a whole nother issue. We know what happened there. It's the area of the accounting department that the day before, and Rumsfeld said, hey, we're missing all these trillions of dollars. And then the accounting department of the Pentagon got hit, and we all know it's not a plane because those aluminum planes cannot penetrate reinforced walls of multiple layers. Just look up a picture of a plane when it gets hit by a bird and see what happens to the damage of the nose of the plane. So it's up to people to do their research, but we do need to remember the people that were killed in that day. And thank God my brother, whose company had an office in that building, he didn't get a position. Otherwise, he would have been in there as well. But there's more to it than the story the government puts out. That's just facts. So,
Keith,
I
we appreciate that.
Thank
you for the call. Let's go to Paulie in Nampa with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. And again, as these theories continue to go, everybody's entitled to them. My own opinion, I'm going with what was said. And of course, there are a lot of things the government does keep from us. Paulie, good morning.
Yeah, usually with the disclaimer that it's for your own good.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, my 9/11 story is not too dramatic. It was a regular work day, and I always had the front door open and the TV on the Channel 7, and I wasn't paying any attention to it, but I started to look at it and noticed that one of the trade centers was smoking. I couldn't believe that, so I got my attention, and I stopped dead in my tracks, and before I knew it, the second plane hit it. I said, "You got to be kidding." And sure enough, both towers eventually went down before I could watch them come down. But you knew the kinetic energy was going to take them down, so there was no point in standing there and being late for work. But there was a couple that lived next door, and they had a young child, and he was a sergeant, or equivalency of a sergeant in the Egyptian army at one time. So I was, kind of interested in talking to him and finding out what it was that he did when he was in the army in Egypt. And after that happened, my conversations with him kind of slowed down, because you don't want to be associated with somebody that could be another terrorist now, because everybody's a terrorist with brown skin. And at that time, and I knew that wasn't for real, but it really amazed me when I got to work and we were taking down this old Outback building in an alleyway in downtown Boise, old Boise, and we're dismantling it. And he's loading me up. This guy is my coworker, and I told him what was going on, what I saw on TV, and he said, "It's about time somebody set this back." And I about threw me through a loop. About took a monkey wrench to his head. Could not believe he said what he said.
Well, you had a lot of people that day that were celebrating in this country.
Yeah, unfortunately.
They were, and I can remember I had to do a retraction on the air because we had busted somebody for doing that. And you had a lot of people that were from that area that they celebrated.
Yeah. Well, I pretty much instinctively knew that it was Osama bin Laden because of the fact that he had done a lot of work as the Mujahideen in Afghanistan to help defeat the Russians when the Russians invaded Afghanistan. And he was a central figure in that. And something just told me that's who it was. And sure enough, the name started popping up on the news all over the place about a week later. And it was apparent to me right away who had done that, who had masterminded it. Now, here's the problem that we have. 9/11 may be 24 years past, but we still have people dying from the effects of the Trade Center and breathing those noxious fumes and concrete dust. And here's the problem. They were going to be given a life sentence, and somebody with the right mind decided to change it to a death sentence, the real mastermind of 9/11. And I just hope that they follow through and they don't waste time and money and energy and cause more grief for people of the surviving members of the United States of America citizenry. That I just hope that they do the job that they're supposed to do, and they're going to carry out the sentence and dispatch these people that were responsible for that. I can't understand for the life of me why they would keep them alive. What more information can they waterboard out of them? You know what I'm saying? It's just take care of them.
Well, now they won't even let us do that.
Yeah. It's never ending. It's all hush hush, and it's done behind closed doors, but it's being done. CIA doesn't change its spots. So
yeah, but back to the lives that were lost, back to the lessons that we learned. Those of us that have made it through, what a great challenge that day was, and every day continues to be.
Yeah. Now, what was the other? It wasn't the Faro Act born out of that too as well?
You got me.
There was another act other than the Patriot Act that came out of that as well. I think it was the beginnings of the Faro Act.
Well, today the Patriot Act seems antiquated.
Yeah, compared to the way they have electronics and what they have available to eavesdrop. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, with the FISA warrants and anything else, they can just get you. Paulie, thank you for the call, sir. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. More of your calls next. Let's get you to work safely and on time. You're listening to 5436, 580-KIDO as we continue to remember those that have fallen, the fallout from the big debate. We go to Cindy in Eagle with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Cindy.
Oh, good morning, Kevin. I have a little bit of a different take on what happened on the morning of 9/11. Of course, everybody remembers where they were. I remember waking up and seeing it on TV, and I went ahead and went to work. I was working at public television at the time, and everybody there had TVs in their offices. The rule was you had to leave it on public television station. You were subject to termination if you did not. But I walked in, of course, and immediately turned my TV to a network station. I mean, people were surrounding my TV and a few others that were on network. And I had one of the administrator's assistants come in and literally reprimand. They say, you have to leave that on public television. And I looked at her and tried to give my best withering look. And then she backed down. Later, there was much discussion about whether to leave the children's programming in place or to switch to national coverage. And the decision was made to leave the children's programming on. And there were many calls from parents thanking the station for that because the kids, there was nothing. If you remember, all the stations were covering this horrible unfolding event, and so they chose, and rightly so, to leave it on, the Sesame Street and the fun things for the kids. And at least the kids had one place that they could go and watch something that wasn't awful. But it was like it was yesterday. I can't believe it was 23 years ago. I do remember one lady walking in, and she came up to me, and she said, I don't understand. She said, this was out in the hallway. She said, what's wrong with everybody this morning? They all seem so weird. Well, she hadn't heard. She didn't watch TV. She didn't listen to the radio, and she was listening to a headphone book on her way into work. So she was absolutely baffled as to why everybody was walking around as if they were in a trance. And I had to explain to her. And then, of course, she was stunned, as everybody else was. But I still get sad. I wear a pin. It's kind of an angel pin where the arms are outstretched. And it reminds me of the story of the girl that she knew she wasn't going to be saved. She was up on one of the top floors of the buildings. She waited and waited. And finally, she did the sign of the cross, and she leaped. And I wear that pin I don't know who it was, but I wear that pin every 9/11 in her memory.
Well, Cindy, you bring up a very good point that, television, which was much more bigger then. There wasn't social media. And,
yeah.
You know, I can remember the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather being on MTV. It was one of those events that we will thankfully, hopefully never see again. But the stress, look, I know people that left work that day. Obviously the images, you know, Glenn earlier talking about the French filmmaking documentary that they'd happened to be hanging out with this fire department, unrelated, and they caught them on the worst day, but the best of them came out, and the pastor who died, the priest who died in there, as I recall talking to Fire Officer Sean Duffy, just married, who was at the old Marriott at the World Trade Center, and discussing how he almost died that day with the roof collapsing around him. And remember, and if you've never been to New York, I had, for some weirdo reason, gone to New York like 2 times before that, and I had been at the top of the World Trade Center. The pictures don't do them justice. They were as wide as they were high, and there was a mall underneath at a subway station, and when you go up on top of the Empire State Building, it wobbles. When you went up on top of the World Trade Center, it was just so solid and so huge, and you felt so safe. And since the attack at 93, the World Trade Center really, they were, you know, a lot of New Yorkers thought they were ugly compared to the majestic Empire State Building. But that had been the place to go for New Yorkers, and you always went at night when the tourists weren't there. That's what I did. And just to imagine the horror of that day and all the lives that have been so drastically changed because of it.
I've never been, and I don't like heights, and I can't imagine the terror, the absolute terror of these people that were trapped. It's a nightmare that I try not to think about, but it comes back every year, and I'm trying to imagine, do you choose between being burned alive or jumping? And I don't know. To me, it's just unholy. So we should remember everybody, and I'm glad you're covering it, and I'm glad that at least some of the news stations are covering the complete ceremony today, because we tend to forget. I forget that my granddaughter wasn't even alive when 9/11 hit. She doesn't really know what we're talking about. And, you know, you have to remember, one of your callers brought up the fact that there weren't any planes, and people were trapped. And literally in the middle of crisis, people came up with funny stories. I remember one story about people that couldn't get out of New York. They tried the bus, they tried the plane, they tried everything. Finally, they went and bought a used car and drove, and they got out that way. But I also remember that there were flags everywhere, from, especially in Idaho, from the, you know, Coeur d'Alene clear down to Boise. Everybody was waving a flag, and I would like to get back to the point where we all would wave flags on 9/11. Mine's out.
Well, and every day. Cindy, thank you for the call.
Thank you, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let's play the tribute put together by Glenn Beck, Bo.
Say again. Executive 956, did you understand that transmission?
Yeah, that transmission he said was unreasonable. It sounded like someone said they have a bomb on board. Sir, did you hear the transmission where the airplane that said he had a bomb on board?
Affirmative, he said there was a bomb on board. That's what we thought. We just we didn't get it clear.
That aircraft you can't get a hold of, has he turned to the east now?
He's just turned to the east also.
Okay, 956, we had a visual on him. Just stand by.
Do you have a visual on him now?
We did, but we lost him at the turn.
You can make a turn back to 220 heading. Let me know if you can see him.
They were making a turn at 9. Negative. We're 30 northwest of the exit. We're looking down.
Okay, American 1060, executive 956. We just lost the target on that aircraft.
Man, Z100 852. Something weird is going on.
Yeah.
The World Trade Center is on fire.
Oh my Seriously, the top of the building. We're trying to get information.
Top level of one of the
news to unfold from New York City.
A plane crash. Just
my sister's in that building.
Okay.
And I hope she's okay. And I gotta run to New York. Oh my God! It's complete pandemonium.
All right, first of all, calm down.
There's raining papers and ashes.
105, 1025.
People are jumping out the windows. They're jumping out the windows.
A second plane has now flown in.
Wait, explosion at the Pentagon?
A third location on New York and outside of Washington.
I don't have words to describe what I'm witnessing right now.
Effective immediately until further notice, flight operations in the national airspace system by United States civil aircraft and foreign civil and military aircraft are prohibited.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward, and freedom will be defended.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
It's not on itself, and it is not.
Just landed on Manhattan.
All right, so now we look back up to the TV. One of the World Trade Towers has collapsed and fallen.
I've never seen anything like this.
I've got 5 patients. They need to be. We got an ambulance full of cops and pedestrians. Building just collapsed. I don't have much more. I got another tower that just came down 1013. All the cops away from the building. You got a female officer down. Female officer, where are you now, King? Where are you, King? Where are you?
We're not going to be stopped. We're not going to be deterred. We're not going to stay at home. We're not going to be frightened. We're going to live our lives as Americans.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
We're all brothers. We all got to stick together.
One nation, under God, indivisible.
Where are you, King?
My God, look at the skyline without the towers.
It is Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. This is Glenn Beck. Dateline, New York. In one of the most audacious attacks ever, terrorists hijacked 2 airliners, crashed them into the World Trade Center in a coordinated series of blows today that brought down the twin 110-story.
KIDO Talk Radio. The debate is a big issue. We'll be talking about that the rest of the week. Here is liberal, snidely, snarkly Jonathan Karl going toe-to-toe with J.D. Vance last night. Now remember, J.D. Vance and Donald Trump meet the press. Kamala and the Minnesota Waltz run from the press.
Vance, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
So I want to get to one part in the debate where you came up. Donald Trump was asked if he would veto a national abortion ban. He didn't answer the question, suggested, I guess, that he wouldn't. And then it was pointed out that you, in fact, said not that long ago that he would veto a national abortion ban. Can you explain the mix-up here?
Well, I think the president's been very clear that he doesn't want a national abortion ban. I think in some ways he finds the question a little bit ridiculous, because why are we asking him about legislation that's never going to actually happen, and why he would veto it or not veto it when he says very explicitly that he doesn't support a national abortion ban and he wants these policies to be made by the states. But I think there's a deeper and more important issue here in this debate, which is that you had Kamala Harris effectively echoing platitude after platitude after platitude. The American people can't pay their grocery bills on platitudes. They can't put their kids in a house on platitudes. And Kamala Harris had a lot to say, but very little actual substance behind it for how she's going to lower grocery prices, secure the border, and make housing more affordable in this country. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She can't run on her record, and she apparently can't run on much of her plans either, because it's just a lot of slogans and not a whole lot of substance.
But Senator Vance, why won't he just say that he would veto the national abortion ban? And by the way, had you spoken to him about it before you were put in a position to answer that question?
No, I hadn't spoken to him about it because, again, Donald Trump thinks the question is absurd because he doesn't support a national abortion ban, and he's been explicit about it. And, John, I think that it's so preposterous for the media to focus so much on an issue where Donald Trump has been crystal clear, and not on the fact that people can't afford groceries and housing because of Kamala Harris's policies. This election is actually quite simple, and Kamala Harris and apparently the media would like to distract Americans on issues, by the way, that Donald Trump's been crystal clear about, but they're not talking nearly enough. This debate didn't talk nearly enough about the fact that Americans are struggling because they can't afford groceries, they can't afford housing, and a lot of their kids are dying of fentanyl overdoses because Kamala Harris has let the Mexican drug cartels take over the southern border. This is a disgrace, what's going on in our country, John, and we could do so much better if we just had better leadership. We've got the best workers, the most beautiful country, the best natural resources, but Kamala Harris's leadership is squandering the great benefits of this country. It's why we've got to get back to Donald Trump's leadership.
That guy is going to do great against Minnesota Waltz. And it doesn't matter if Nora O'Donnell, Laura O'Donnell, Old O'Donnell, whoever, Old McDonald and his farm, or Margaret Brennan or whoever else goes up against him. We really don't care about the moderators. But when you have J.D. Vance going against Minnesota Waltz, that's going to be something clear, concise, articulate, and really, Aurora, Colorado, when we go back to this debate and people are going to go, oh, it's over. Well, they want it to be over. They want us to be depressed. They want us to think that Kamala is going to win. We all know that the fix is in. We all know that we have to work harder, try harder, be better. And when you talk to the libs, as we like to call them here, or as my friend Sam in Alabama calls them, the liberals, liberal. It's just funny to say that. Liberal. Conservative, it's a little different. It's been a little bit more mainstream, more masculine. Liberal. Come here, liberal. When you're talking to liberal and the liberal, will say something, you're going to go, do you like paying higher gas prices? Do you like, paying for, groceries that are expensive, that are, out of this reach? And, you take a look at the government. The government isn't the solution. As we know, Ronald Reagan taught us that. The government is not the solution. But what is she going to do? I'm going to give you $25,000 to put it on a down payment on a home. Thanks, but that's not really going to move the needle. Who wouldn't want a free, $25,000? However, as we know, nothing is free when it comes to this crew. We're all going to be paying. And like I said, it reminds me of when in the old days, and maybe they still do this, the credit card companies, we're going to give you 10,000 bonus points. Bonus. And, I won't be the one to mention the venture card, but the venture card comes out and you can travel, or an airline card, Delta, you can travel, but you've got to book through us. Well, when you book through them, what? The points are more, and they inflate everything up. So if everybody has $25,000, if I'm selling a home, I'm going to crank up the cost of my home to be sold $25,000. It devalues the money. And then we have this age of entitlement. We're going to have to overcome that based on what happened during the pandemic when we taught people for 3, 4, or even 5 years as it continues, free money. Free money. Think about this. What a weird, bizarro time in America that was, true believers. What a weird state of play that was. Here we are. Everybody's locked down at home. lockdown in the air, lockdown everywhere, double secret probation, and people are just spending money because they got it from the government. Let me tell you about the brilliance of people in Idaho. The best Miller's mission we've ever had, and we've had so many benefiting the Boise Rescue Mission, was when we, this little teeny tiny show that represents conservatives in Idaho, were the first thing to do something publicly, the first organization to bring back the public, to invite the public. We rolled the Napa Walmart on Garrity and Franklin. We opened up America. We opened up Idaho. And I could not believe the number of people that said, I didn't earn this money. Here's my check from the government to represent the rescue mission. Over $50,000 in a week. That was because of your generosity. And that was the spirit that we had and we still have. And we look at that today. I want this, I want that. You're not entitled to anything. Life is tough. It's not getting any easier. And all she wants to do is give us the handouts. Let's get you to work safely and on time. KIDO Talk Radio traffic with our friend Dave Burnett on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Kevin. From the Idaho Pizza Company studio, traffic now really looking pretty good as you're coming out of Canyon County into Ada County. No major problems or accidents to get in the way. Construction project for you if you're headed up Highway 55. Not only firefighters on the roadway, but quite a bit of construction as you head toward Horseshoe Bend. Drive the 2024 Dennis Dillon Mazda CX-30, $329 a month with available 0% financing, or a 2024 Mazda CX-5, only $347 a month. Over 40 in stock. Dennis Dillon Mazda, 9501 Fairview Avenue in Boise. That's your
reaction to the big debate. By the way, you can check out how your fellow Idahoans reacted by going to our website or being a member of the Appy App Club at KIDOTalkRadio.com. Let's go to Security Guard Mike with Kevin Miller. Hello, sir. Thank you for listening. Hello, Security Guard Mike.
Hello, Kevin Miller. This is Security Guard Mike. Hey, just wanted to call in and say, I remember on 9/11.
I know, Security Guard Mike. We introduced you 3 times. How are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. I got a kind of deaf ear or something. Anyway, at 9/11, 2001, I was on the USS Decatur, and I remember that day when our CO came across the 1MC, and he said to us, he said, "Well, we've been attacked, and get ready to get underway, folks, and sailors, and so tell your wives, go home, get your bags packed, and get ready because we're going underway." And we went underway, and we didn't come back for a whole long time. And I just want to say we need to remember that day. We do not want to forget. And I do want to remember that day. And I want us to all come together as Americans and pledge allegiance to the flag once again, because that's what we need to do. And it was a rough.
Like I said, I want to tell my thoughts and prayers to all the families.
They have to show a united front. That is what we just saw a few minutes ago.
And I pray for our leaders.
They're saying that there are entire companies of firefighters that they don't know where they're at.
Certainly thoughts and prayers go out to the families.
You can't help but think here are at least 400 or 500 people who went to the scene after the first crash, who went there to help. They perished as well.
The determination of these terrorists will not deter the determination of the American people. We are survivors, and freedom is a survivor.
Where were you that day? We apologize to Security Guard Mike. We lost you on that one. Our apologies. The phones are on the fritz. But we continue on taking your calls on the debate, taking your calls on remembering 9/11, 23 years ago. What do you say to people that weren't alive or can't remember? Hard to believe, but if you're a 23-year-old, the prime of your life, you've read about it in your history books. Or if you're 15, it's the same equivalent of Pearl Harbor. More coming up next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. 5436-580 KIDO. We appreciate you listening. And, of course, again, today, honoring those that have fallen, never forgetting, and the big debate last night. An eclectic mix, but we are looking forward to your phone calls. Once again, J.D. Vance saying, why are people not talking about this story out of Ohio?
Senator Vance, what do you say to Haitian Americans and Haitian immigrants who say spreading false claims about them put their lives at risk?
Well, I don't think that no one has spread false claims. What they've said is that a small migrant community, 20,000, so it's big for the city of Springfield, but it's small compared to all Haitians in the United States of America, that small migrant community has caused a lot of problems. It's led to higher rates of communicable diseases. That's a verifiable fact. It's led to animals disappearing. Many of my constituents have said that has been happening. It's led to higher home prices. That is a verifiable fact. So this influx has led to a lot of poverty.
But you said that immigrants have eaten animals, and city officials have said that that's not true.
City officials have said that's not true. That's not actually accurate. What they've said
Springfield
is
city manager said there's no evidence that immigrants are eating animals, and you have been saying, and Donald Trump just said on stage, that they are eating animals. I'm asking you. Yes, I'm asking you. I'm asking you.
Can you answer the question? Can you ask the question and then let me answer it?
Yes, please.
The city manager said there's no verifiable evidence. A lot of residents on the ground have said that there is. That just means the city manager, I think, isn't fully in touch with what's going on the ground there. I've heard from many of my own constituents who have seen these things with their own eyes, who have seen these abductions with their own eyes, who have seen geese being taken out of local parks and slaughtered in front of their eyes. What do I think is a bigger problem? Insulting 20,000 people, or the fact that my constituents can't live a good life because Kamala Harris opened the border? I think it's Kamala Harris needs to do her job.
A lot of these Haitian immigrants
people
have
happier
moved
and healthier in this country.
And this is the game that they play. Yamiche Alcindor. And yes, I pronounced her name correctly. I know English is a second language to me, along with phonics and pronunciation. Yamiche Alcindor of the New York Times, of NBC News, and this is the gotcha question. All she's doing is trying to be divisive, playing the race card, Haitian Americans. Well, if you're a Haitian American, I'm sure you're happy that you're out of Haiti, considering the gangs are running Haiti. And J.D. Vance, he was smart. Are you going to let me answer the question? By the way, do you think the city manager is going to agree to what's going on there? Here's a real guy from Springfield. Now, this guy, why in the heck would he make this stuff up? Obviously, the people in Springfield, Ohio are embarrassed, angry, and trying to cover up for Joe Biden. By the way, Joe Biden hates Idaho. Joe Biden really hates Ohio. The East Palestine, Ohio folks, he still hasn't been there, or maybe he was for a minute. Toxic waste spilled all over the place and nobody gives a rip.
You got a bunch of people on a bus getting dropped off at a gas station to come down here. I know a single mom that FaceTimed me tonight, FaceTimed me this morning at the welfare office that really need something. And it's nothing but immigrants over there. And I don't even want to seem like I'm coming down on the immigrants, because it's the people that's bringing them down here. Because wherever they're at, that's what they're used to, bro. They're in the park grabbing up ducks by their neck and cutting their head off and walking off with them and eating them like.
Does that guy sound like a Republican activist? Does that guy sound like he's making this stuff up? And the media, going back to our friend Denver and Reince Priebus, they're in the tank. Could you imagine if our beloved Canadian geese here were attacked by people? Would we sit back and say to ourselves again and again and again on KIDO Talk Radio that this isn't happening? Well, of course they're not going to admit that this is happening. It's these people are not making this up. They just want to get the welfare. And I don't blame them. See, Joe and Kamala have flooded the zone. And they have flooded the zone with too many people overwhelming our welfare system. And so then you have Americans that are down on their luck, Americans that need assistance, Americans that are there, and they can't get their assistance because they're giving it to the Haitians. That Joe waved a magic wand and just let him in. And by the way, people do not trust the media. Here is Wall Street Journal editor Emma Tucker talking about the death of public trust.
Really not that long ago, as I say, we owned the news. We were the gatekeepers, and we very much owned the facts as well. If it said it in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, then that was a fact. Nowadays, people can go to all sorts of different sources for the news, and they're much more questioning about what we're saying. So it's no longer good enough for us just to say, this is what happened, or this is the news. We have to explain our working. So readers expect to understand how we source stories. They want to know how we go about getting stories. We have to sort of lift the bonnet, as it were, and in a way that newspapers aren't used to doing, and explain to people what we're doing. We need to be...
Yeah, what are they doing? Let's go to Cowboy Calvin on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Cowboy Calvin.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. Good morning, Americans. Just called to tell you where I was at 9/11. That I wasn't on a horse, believe it or not, Kevin. I was on a U.S. Forrestal carrier leaving Hawaii, headed to San Diego. And that picture I gave you was taken at Pearl Harbor, was taken the day before we left. We were a day out in the Pacific when the ship went to general quarters.
What went on in your mind?
Bad things happen, and the ship was already coming back from the Middle East to protect the world. So you got to give all the military credit, and I'm sorry that Joe Biden and his regime were very responsible for our lost soldiers in Afghanistan. And there's no way that they as a commander-in-chief, he should have allowed the enemy to receive all those weapons. He's responsible, and Harris is responsible for that too. And what she said last night in the debate about all the wonderful military people, that's a lie. She cares little or nothing about the U.S. military.
Pennsylvania.
At this time, 23 years ago, the 40 passengers and crew members of Flight 93 made a decision that would change our world forever.
Remembering the people on United Flight 93 that fought the hijackers, preventing it from crashing into the nation's capital. Nearly 3,000 people died in that horrible day. America's listening to Fox News.
KIDO Talk Radio. John. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM and 580 AM.
Hey, Idaho, it's Lars Larson. Catch me today at 4. Now back to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning. Remembering September 11th. Where were you when the world stood still? Joining us now, a young man who we've talked about. One day, hopefully, we'll get him out here so you can meet him in person. His name is John Mounts, the real person that the caricature Sweet William is based on. John, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you doing?
I'm living the dream. I'm good, not well. And today, we take a look at September 11th. You and I have a special bond. We were working together at that time in Birmingham, Alabama, which is where you are now. But it was much more than where you were at that day. It was the day the world changed forever. Can you believe, first of all, on a personal level, that you and I are both still in radio 20 years later?
It's astounding. It's in some ways it feels like it was yesterday, and other ways it feels like it was a million years ago.
It was a million years ago, and of course, now did you go to New York on the 5-year anniversary, or were you working behind the scenes in Nashville?
I was behind the scenes. Now, you went 2 weeks after it happened, I remember, but
right.
No, I had not been on the anniversary.
Right. Well, we'll get to that, but I mean, the 5th year anniversary, and you and I talked about this because I had a chance to go to New York along with Phil Valentine, God rest his soul. We've talked about him here. And we always thought that it would be, you know, people would go back 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Now, here, 20 years later, not many people going back to it. Sure, it'll be on television. Sure, you'll have radio hosts that work that day, and some that didn't will mention it in passing and say, I was in 7th grade at the time, or I was a senior in high school, or I joined the military because of it. But it's fascinating how, I don't want to say we've forgotten, but it seems to be going back in the pages of the history books as opposed to how real, how vivid, how alive it was back then.
I don't know that we've forgotten so much as we've kind of forgotten the lessons that we should have learned on those days. We also forgot to be kind. You remember after September 11th how America was unified. Everyone had an American flag hanging outside their house. You remember the event we did at the local concert venue at the Oak Mountain Amphitheater, where we brought in thousands of people, 2 days after, to be united as one. And I feel like that's something that we've really lost as Americans.
You're right. And we'll get into that. So, John Mounts, let's talk a little bit about what memories of September 11th do you have when you watch the television, when you listen to the audio? Now, you run a radio station among the several that you run in Birmingham, Alabama. So, obviously, you're putting together the collection of that coverage on that day. What goes on in your mind?
You know, it's weird. You can't help but get a chill when you go back and you listen to the audio, because I remember exactly where I was when I heard that go through our speakers the very first time, when it was live. And I remember what we first thought, how naive we were to the way the world was. And, at first it was a fire, and we thought, that's unfortunate. There's a fire on top of the World Trade Center. And then we said, a plane, well, okay, a small plane or something like that. And then while the whole world, us included, were sitting there watching that fire, that we said that there's a strange, looks like something hit that building. Well, we're all sitting there watching it, and they confirmed that a plane hit the one, but we certainly didn't think that all of a sudden, here comes another plane right into the other World Trade Center tower, and we couldn't believe it. None of us could. And I remember we were running the live coverage when the second plane hit, and just at that moment, you're like, we're at war. This is terrible. And that morning, it's like time, it went so fast, and it stood still all at the same time. The chaos that we felt at the radio station were nothing compared to what was going on there in New York. But, the things that we were trying to determine, to nail down what had happened, what's happening next. Where's the president? What do you mean there's another plane in the air? What do you mean one's headed for Washington? What do you mean one hit the Pentagon? If you remember, there were moments where they were evacuating, like the Sears Tower in Chicago. The call came down that if Atlanta goes down, that we would switch control to Birmingham. I mean, it was insane that day, and the things that transpired that morning and the rest of that day were just incredible.
Indeed. Our great friend John Mounts joining us, KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning, remembering September 11th. For John and myself, we were working together. I can remember the small 13-inch screen where you and I were talking during a commercial. And as many people that have worked with Kevin Miller in the past have known, it's go, 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 blow up commercial, go, go, go. And describing that, along with one of your communications professors from UAB, the University of Alabama, Birmingham, and then switching into what do we do from a local yet national perspective. And you're right, if Atlanta went down, it would be up to you and me to guide the ship, because we were on not one station, but we were on, 6 or 7, however many were in that building, and possibly going statewide.
Yeah, at one point we switched to where every station that was in that building was simulcasting what we were doing. And there was kind of a lot of internal chaos going on, because we kind of didn't know who was in charge of making that call. I think you ultimately unilaterally made the call. But yeah, we were on, and there was talk about maybe on in this city and that city because they needed the coverage. You know, they needed somebody who was actually on it and was taught, because we were not only covering the national thing, and of course we had the national feed from our network, but we also were going back and forth and doing the local thing. Like we would talk to the people at the airport here in town, because they grounded all the planes nationwide. It became a local story. There was confusion in terms of who was in charge of what. The governor had to come out and talk, and we talked to him, and just, as the day progressed, just more and more things happened that had to be covered both from a local and a national level.
Right. And here we have you in your 20s, me in my 30s, basically making calls. And, of course, we have, before he was famous, Paul Feinbaum coming in and coordinating local, state, and national coverage. And, John, as a fellow practitioner of talk radio, and you have loved talk radio for your whole life, it is one of your passions, as it is mine. People wanted to talk. People wanted to listen that day.
And that's the thing, talk radio provides that outlet for people to vent their feelings, and I think also companionship, comfort, because the voices you hear on the radio, those are your friends, maybe your friends and neighbors, but also your longtime friend Kevin Miller, or whoever who's a talk show host, talking to you during a time that you will never forget. And you will never forget. You sometimes, during those situations, you have to almost stop yourself and realize the things that I'm going to say for the next hour or the next 2 hours are going to become immortalized forever. No one remembers what I talked about. We don't remember what you talked about on September the 10th or the 9th, but we definitely remember to this day where we were, what we were doing, and the things that we were saying to our listeners on the 11th.
Indeed. And then we go back in time, how America has changed. And that day we really didn't know where the president was. We really didn't know what to do. We just kept taking calls and taking the news reports. And God bless Peter Jennings, God rest his soul, anchoring the coverage for us, along with Jim Hickey and others. And then there was the fallout. What do you do after carrying the speech at night? And for a while there wasn't any syndicated talk, but there was, the company that we worked for at the time, they just had local hosts just taking calls for a week or two round the clock.
And that was the thing, there was even that question that we all had of course, once it started, there was no commercials ran. I don't think there was any commercials ran for the rest of that day. I think there was a conversation several days later about, okay, now do we run commercials? When do we go back to, being a normal radio station? And, in a way we never did. In a way it changed us. There was some national talk shows, radio shows that were launched because of September 11th, that were just local shows that became national shows, and all of a sudden shows that the stations used to run didn't seem relevant anymore, because you needed that round-the-clock coverage of what was going on in the world, because it was a whole new world.
Indeed, it was a whole new world. Our great friend John Mounts joining us. Where were you on September 11th? So, it's funny when you have these big news organizations and television stations, they have editors and assignment editors and managers. And in reality, we had a news operation of, 2 or 3 people, and the decision makers were you and me. And I still marvel at thinking about what could we do at the time being in Alabama concerning New York, and whether it was you that came up with the idea or I came up with the idea of going there. I mean, the first local show outside of New York to go there, and then you had Glenn Beck and others follow suit. But here you have 2 guys, one in his 20s, one in his 30s, saying, even though the planes aren't flying right now, we're going. I think it was either you or I when I bought the tape recorder.
Yeah, you did. I told you go get the a cheap tape recorder that you could record interviews. We didn't have any of this digital stuff then. We didn't have smartphones or any of that business. We're lucky to have a cell phone. But you went over, I think, the Kmart, which isn't there anymore, by the way, on Green Springs, and you got yourself like the world's cheapest cassette recorder. And we were fortunate enough that the national network we work with, actually had some studio space for you when you went to New York. And I think it was like 2 weeks to the day that you went to New York, and you were just on the street with that little recorder, and you went around and you talked to, and this was before people were so reticent to be in front of a camera, in front of a microphone, because, now social media, everyone's afraid of what they say, but you talk to everyone from first responders to just store owners, Nino, with Nino's restaurant, Dr. Laura Barreau, all these people that you talked to and you brought the sound back, and what you did was you recorded it. You went out during the day after your show and you gathered sound and you brought it back to the studios there in New York, and then you would feed it back to me prior to our show, and I would cut it up and then we'd play it back as if it were, as pitched to it as close as we could to making it live, to bring the story alive for our listeners. But back then the technology wasn't what it is today.
Well, you're right. And I can remember Sam Donaldson being in the next room that I was in. And again, here you have these two guys from small town America. And it was you and me, and I'm walking the streets of New York. And I can remember the incredible sadness and yet hope when whether it was the firefighter that thought he was going to die at the Marriott there at the Twin Towers, or whether it was Nino and his beautiful mother, Josephine, who at 80 years old lost their entire business because they started feeding people. The spirit of resilience that we heard from it. And again, folks, you don't have to be with us at the time, but this is what we did, and this is what broadcasters did throughout America, where you could hear these folks, and whether it was the cab driver, whether it was somebody from Somalia, all living in that city, the incredible sadness. And, one of my regrets is I still don't have that. I'm sure I lost the photos from going to Ground Zero, and I can remember that incredible smell and talking to the news reporters there, and bringing that experience back to you and the listeners.
And that is one of those things that you feel honored to have been part of. The word is not you liked it because you didn't like that. It's a terrible thing to have happened, but you feel honored that you had the opportunity to serve your listeners in that way, to be able to provide them with that kind of incredible service and that kind of content, to take them right there to when it happened. Nowadays, the retrospectives are everywhere, and you can see and hear this stuff 1,000 times over and find it on the internet. But back then, it was brand new. So we were the ones generating the content and bringing it to people.
Right, at the local level, doing the national stuff. And the great thing about radio, and maybe social media to an extent today, can move mountains, but because people heard that show, we had a group of individuals from a church volunteer to go up to Ground Zero and meet those folks and meet Nino and make a difference. I can remember talking to a producer from 48 Hours years later and mentioning something about Alabama, and she goes, "Oh, you were with those Alabama people." And what a fascinating lesson it was for those young kids from that church that went up there and served meals.
And that's one of those things where you got to feel honored that you were able to make that change for people, because a lot of times you think, well, there's nothing you can do. We're so far away, whether you're in Boise or Birmingham, you're so far away from New York, it doesn't matter. But it really does, and you really can make a difference, even from thousands of miles away.
Yeah, but from your perspective, and again, you're the unsung hero. You're back at the station holding people off. Paul Feinbaum wants to talk about the South Carolina Gamecocks. You're putting this all together. What was going on in your mind?
I think the main thing I was thinking is, I wonder what's next. That day, you almost became numb to it. But after the two towers fell, and then other buildings, 7 World Trade fell, and then other buildings just kept falling all day long. And as the day progressed, you wonder what's next. By the next day, you're wondering, will it happen again? I remember even a year later, my wife and I, we were going to get married, and I moved the date of our wedding because I said, well, we don't want to do it right before the anniversary of September 11th, because what if something happens? So we better move it just in case. And no one knew. Well, shoot, 10 years later, Benghazi, it actually happened 10 years later, where an attack happened on the anniversary. So nobody knew what was going to be next. It's one thing to look back on history with the benefit of knowledge of everything that happened contextually. It's another thing when you're actually living it. And that day we were living history.
We were. And then the chance to make a difference with those kids. That's what I'll always remember, that they paid their own way up there, because the United Way, the Red Cross would not allow people to volunteer, only through Nino. And we've played the clips of Nino. We'll play the clips of Nino today. But here you have a guy who was an immigrant, gave back. His family gave back, where they had a restaurant where The press wasn't allowed in, and somehow, again, I wish I could be a heroic figure, but as you know, John, I'm more of a bumbling, stumbling buffoon. I stumble onto these people. We start talking to them, and God bless them, they're feeding people. And then we stumble onto a professor from St. John's University, Dr. Laura Barone, who is actually recruiting people to come to New York to help rebuild it.
And I couldn't imagine what it was like when you were on the ground there, from the smells to the sights to the people that you interacted with, and the fact that you were able to find people who were so willing and so able to talk to you and tell their story. And there were so many stories to be told that day. Every single person, you could have spent 2 hours getting just that one person's story, and that was times 100 or 1,000. You had to kind of pick out, I guess, the person you talked to. I remember Officer Shane. What was his last name?
Shane Duffy.
Shane Duffy. Yeah, he was the one who said that he was in the lobby of the World Trade Center. The door opened up and the woman came out on fire, and people were actually still alive and on fire, and he saw that. And those stories, everyone had a story like that.
They did indeed, and to be able to tell those stories and to make a difference. More with our great friend John Mounts next. KIDO Talk Radio.
With my symptoms, and the stellate ganglion came up on one of my internet searches, so I just went down that rabbit hole and got really excited about how it's changed people's lives. I would recommend them because I believe that what they're doing is really helpful to a lot of other people as well, and it's helped me a ton.
For more information, visit our website, stellateinstituteofidaho.com.
KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM and 580 AM.
Or by Ron Grant, your safer money specialist.
And joining us now is our great friend Ron Grant. Ron, great to have you with us.
Hey, thank you, Kevin. Great to be with you.
There's a lot of people have a lot of questions about how to keep their money safe. Ron, how do we keep our money safe?
Well, I've been doing that for 14 and a half years on talk radio, and it's important, if you're over 50 to stop chasing returns and get that guaranteed lifetime income that you can't outlive. If you're self-employed, what's great, we can provide a pension-like product for you that you can put more money in than you can traditional retirement plans, and you can't lose the principal and you can't lose the gains, and that's important, Kevin.
Well, Ron, if people want information, what can they do?
Got a great educational website that they can go on 24/7. There's some articles there that they can read. There's videos there that they can take a look at. Heck, there's even a book they can download, 10 Things to Know About Retirement Income. That's safermoneyspecialist.com, or they can call me right here in the Treasure Valley, 208-660-1372, and let's have a conversation on how to keep your money 100% safe out of the Wall Street casino.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Paid for by Ron Grant, your safer money specialist.
Wake up with Kevin Miller. Ride home with Lars Larson. Only on KIDO Talk Radio.
KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning, remembering September 11th, honoring the fallen. Our great friend John Mounts joining us from an unknown station in some parts of the country. We sure appreciate John and his hard work. He is certainly a great example to all of us of his dedication to the craft of talk radio and radio in general. I have the utmost respect for him. He and I were blessed to work together for many, many years, not as often as many as we'd like, but truly it was a blessed time to watch this young man grow and develop and be the leader that he is today right here on KIDO Talk Radio. So, we take a look at September 11th and covering the war and just that overall loss of innocence that day, where we didn't know where the president was. And then he came back at night and addressed Congress. He made a difference, right? It was truly remarkable.
And if you remember, so many people, went on to dislike the president. I think it's just because what you do, the party that's not in power, that's the party that everyone jumps on. But that day, we looked to our leaders, and we actually had, I had a tremendous amount of respect. In fact, I gained a lot of respect for President Bush that day, hearing him say those words. And I'm sure a speechwriter wrote them, but he delivered them so well and made me believe it. It was along the lines of the same. I will put President Bush's speech right up there with Reagan's, slip the surly bonds of earth and touch the face of God. That kind of stuff when he was talking about when he addressed America that night. And a lot was made of what happened that morning when he was there with the kids in Florida and, you know, reading the book to the kids. And who was it? Who was Andy Card? Who was the one who came up and whispered in his ear,
it was Andy Card,
the plane has hit the building.
Right, Andy Card.
And that look on his face, you know, because he knew at that point, you know, something has to be done, but he can't just, because a lot of people said, well, he froze, but he didn't freeze. What it was is he was a leader, and he didn't want to, you know, just jump up, all right, all is lost, and tear out of the room. You know, he had to, you know, calmly excuse himself, you know, get through this situation, calmly excuse himself, move out, and then get to work. And I believe he made brief remarks right before he got on Air Force One, if I remember correctly. And then they got in the air, and remember, for the longest time, no airplanes were in the air except for Air Force One, and Air Force One was just kind of flying around out there, basically because they wanted to make sure nobody knew where our president was, so he was safe from whatever was going to happen next.
Well,
but that was so surreal.
And you remember, she's retired now, but Ann Compton, she was one of the few reporters, and they go, we don't know where we're going, but we're going. And just that whole spirit of we're coming back, you can't stop us, that was really, you know, personified through the President of the United States that day. And, you know, you take a look at Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the Pentagon, reports of Don Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense at the time, going in, trying to pull people out. It's remarkable that he wasn't injured. And then we take a look at how we started healing, and we put together this thing where CNN covered it, where there were thousands of people showing up at an amphitheater, and they cut to it, and there's you and me and the governor and religious people and people of the Islamic faith praying for all those that were lost that day.
You know, a lot of those people are still around, from those religious leaders too. Well, even the man who was governor at the time, he actually went to jail, but he's out, and they're still around. And I almost want to do a reunion thing for the 20-year anniversary, get a lot of those people together and just kind of relive some of the things that we experienced that day or that week that we went through, because it was such an amazing time.
Indeed. Let me get you out on this one. There's a book that just came out concerning Johnny Mike Spann, the first American killed by the Taliban. And thanks again to your hard work. And folks, this isn't the reunion show. This is not the Amen Corner or the applause area. It just shows you the power of local radio. You reached out to his wife, a widow at the time, and you and I and her, we all developed an on-air relationship where here you have this American hero when she wasn't on Good Morning America talking to us and telling folks to be encouraged. What do you remember about Shannon Spann and the loss of her husband, now probably soon to be a bestseller?
I remember her strength, the fact that she could, that out of that tragedy, she pulled it. Pull it together is the wrong phrase, because it wasn't always. She already had it together. I mean, there were of course moments of tremendous sadness, but she maintained composure and was able to speak so well and with such strength to her husband and what he contributed, because he was the first American to die in the war on terror. And it's sad. I spoke with John Spann's father, Johnny Spann Sr. He actually still lives in Alabama, and he's very upset about the way things kind of went down in Afghanistan, because he's upset because his son gave his life and how things didn't work out quite as well as he would have liked out 20 years later. But I just can't believe this incredible strength that these people in his family. I guess it's a familial thing. Everyone has, and everyone has was so. I can't put it into words how they were just so thoughtful and so stoic as they kind of recounted what he contributed.
Yeah, and I go back to the power of local radio, that you and I were neck and neck with all the big shows, but it meant more to her because she spoke directly to his family. And sometimes when you're on the big shows, you don't get that, but that one-on-one relationship, and I'm trying to remember, I think we met her in person maybe once or twice, but that relationship that we developed, that she really developed with the people of America. And now with this book coming out, it was just on Drudge yesterday. It brings back a lot of memories. Your thoughts?
Well, and those memories that she recounts in there are very. It's amazing. It's wonderful that she's able to share them with all of America, because she could keep that to herself, and she would be nothing wrong with that. But the fact that she was willing to share her thoughts and her experiences with everyone, I think that really means a lot to a lot of Americans, because we look for that catharsis, and we look for that sense of companionship, and to find somebody else who also was so involved in the thing, to hear what they were thinking, I think is really helpful.
Closing thoughts, John Mounts.
You know, it's been 20 years, and we continue to march on, and it'll be 25 years and 30 years. But to think about this in the way the greatest generation looks back probably at Pearl Harbor, in the way that my parents' generation probably looked back at the assassination of Kennedy. This was our generation's Pearl Harbor or assassination of JFK. This was the story that, you know, I have a daughter. She's 11. She doesn't remember any of this, obviously. She was born in 2009. And I every year I pull out the pictures and I show her and I remind her, because we should never forget.
And our time together, John Mounts, will you ever forget our adventures?
I don't think I could if I wanted to.
Probably in the nightmare file.
Yeah, some of it, yeah.
I so appreciate.
Thanks, Kevin. Have a great morning.
Folks, much more next. We'll hear from you. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
There we have it. Apparently, I don't want to say there's a cyber attack. I wouldn't be the type of guy that would say it's a cyber attack, but apparently there's some internet issues throughout the Boise area, and we apologize for that. That's something that's beyond our control, and again, we've got the team working on it. We appreciate everybody working hard on that. It's the benefit, the blessing of technology, and yet it's cursed. But let me just say this about the debate. We'll be locked and loaded tomorrow on that. And never forget. And it would be nice that if every flag in Idaho was at half staff, including the flags in Boise. Wouldn't that be nice? We've gotten reports that they're not. I hope that they are. I hope that the state flags are at half staff today, or half mast. God bless you. Keep the faith. Kevin Miller loves you. And there's more of us than there are of them. They won't tell you that, though.